There was nothing special about that morning. The sky was gray, but not dramatically so. The cafe was loud enough to feel alive but quiet enough to be alone. I had just emailed off a photo series to Northwest Light, a small win, maybe, but it felt solid. Tangible. I remember thinking, this might be the start of something. Then my phone buzzed. I hadn't checked that group chat in weeks. Family Circle, it was called, though it never felt like a circle I belonged to. I clicked it out of habit, not curiosity. The first photo was a gilded invitation card, velvet envelope, gold trim. The caption read, "Finally official. Can't wait to celebrate the legacy of love. Alton and Gloria 40. My thumb hovered. A second later, Maris called. Her voice was breezy, like a spring wind that knocked things over without meaning to. Rowena, hey. You saw the invite? Just wanted to be sure you didn't think we forgot you. It's kind of for family only. You understand, right? She said it like it was a compliment. I stared at my half-full cup, mid-sip. But I helped pay for it. I know, and we're so grateful. It's just that Mom wanted it to be intimate. Legacy and all that. In the background, someone's dog barked, a barista laughed too loud, someone dropped a spoon. But inside me, nothing. Just that word circling in my brain like a hawk, family. I was good enough to fund the celebration, but not invited to stand under the chandelier. I didn't even hang up properly. The call just ended, like it uninvited itself from my life. My eyes began their own betrayal, blurring the cafe into a watercolored smear. The clink of plates became too crisp. The air too heavy. It reminded me of a birthday when I turned 12. Maris stood in the middle of a group photo with a sparkler candle, and I stood just outside the frame. No one noticed. Or they did, and didn't care. My Aunt Tressie once told me at a picnic, low and sideways, "You were always the different one, sweetheart." I thought she meant special. Now I think she meant disposable. 3 months ago, I wired $4,200 to my mother to help get things rolling. There wasn't even a thank you card. I figured it didn't matter. But now, that line, "It's only for family," pressed itself into every scar I thought had healed. Like reopening an envelope just to smear the ink. And then it came, the doubt. The trap. Did I overreact? Was it really a formal event? Maybe it wasn't a party. Maybe I misheard. No. I heard every damn syllable. A voice beside me broke the trance. "Excuse me," said a woman with kind eyes and a librarian's air. "I don't mean to eavesdrop, but if you're not family, then I must have misunderstood what family means." Mrs. Tilda Rooks. I knew her name from the local paper. Retired head of Portland's Central Library. Her smile was gentle, but it landed like a gavel. I nodded. That was all I could manage. My phone buzzed again. Juno. I typed, it happened again. Sent. Put the phone down. Picked it up. Typed again. I wasn't even angry, just erased. Deleted. Sent nothing. My hand trembled as I folded the napkin into a triangle. It felt like the only thing I had control over. I didn't go home. I walked. Just walked. The cold air felt deserved. Every step rang with a memory, every silence, every interruption I swallowed like a bitter seed. Dad didn't answer when I called. Not even a voicemail. He had a way of using silence as a scalpel. Efficient. Bloodless. Final. My feet led me toward the Rose District. The place where Maris once snapped at me mid-dinner, "Don't make everything about you, Ro." My mother had smiled. Like it was a compliment. I was always the unpaid intern in this family, I muttered aloud, to no one. I just didn't realize the role had no promotion path. And still, I wanted to believe I misunderstood. That maybe someone else planned the guest list. That maybe love looked different in their world. But I wasn't dumb. Just slow to accept patterns. Back home, I pulled out the dusty box of VHS to digital transfers. Family tapes. Laugh tracks over Thanksgiving. Handheld giggles at camping trips. Birthday songs. Always Maris at the center. Always Mom adjusting the camera to catch the right face. I was there, sure, but blurred, cropped, or serving juice. I typed out a message. Can someone explain why I'm never enough for this family? I deleted it. Then typed again, I love you all. I just wish you loved me back. Deleted. What if they're right? What if I am too much? Then I saw it. On the floor by the door, a misaddressed envelope. Shiny. Thick. Forwarded mail from Maris Place. Gold trim. Velvet. The invitation. I opened it with hands that felt both mine and not. The RSVP card had my mother's cursive, her smile embedded in every loop. They wanted me to pay. But not to attend. How do you define family? Let me ask you this, has anyone ever sent you a bill for love, but skipped your name from the guest list? Tell me in the comments. Because maybe I'm not the only one sitting in a chair without a name. I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of my bed, invitation still warm from my grip, and stared straight ahead like someone waiting to hear a verdict. There was no anger, no sobbing, no dramatic collapse. Just numbers. They started lining up in my head, quiet, neat, undeniable. I opened my budgeting app. One swipe. Another. Then deeper, archived emails, transaction logs, tagged notes. Gloria's roof repair, $1,800. Harlan's tuition cosign, $7,000. Maris' second wedding contribution, $2,500. Every expense was tied to a need. Their need. Not a single one was repaid. Some not even acknowledged. And the scariest part? I didn't expect them to be. I had convinced myself these were gifts. To say otherwise would mean admitting I was used. There's a saying I once read on a diner napkin, the best way to forget what someone owes you is to pretend they never owed it. I'd made that my silent mantra. But tonight, the silence broke. I kept scrolling. It was the voice in her throat that always gave her away. Tight, trembly at the edges, a little too fast, like she was trying to outrun shame. Gloria's voice on the phone, 6 months ago, after Dad's hospital scare. I hate asking, baby. You know that. But we're in a tight spot, and the ambulance wasn't covered. I'd already logged into my account before she finished. She didn't ask for a specific number. She never did. The implication hung like fog. Then came the ribbon at the end, "You're our strongest, Rowena." That's why we ask. Back then, I felt honored. Now, it sounds like a sentence. Maris never asked. She didn't have to. Gloria did the lifting, gilt her dumbbell. The script rarely changed. Harlan once told me, offhand, you know how Mom gets. It's easier to just agree. Like enabling was a love language. Maybe my yes wasn't kindness. Maybe it was just fear in a nicer outfit. I think I've been paying to stay loved. The words tasted sour. True. I dug out an old file from my cloud drive. One I hadn't touched since 2019. Veilsupport.xlsx. I had made it as a joke, a way to track all the help I gave my family. But jokes have roots in truth. $420 emergency vet bill. $1,300 bridal shower deposit. $75 per month mom's prescription support. Each line was a moment I bit my tongue. A moment I bought silence. A moment I confused belonging with sacrifice. Funny how love kept a receipt, just not one I ever got to hold. At the bottom, I added a new line. $4,200 anniversary party contribution. Status, excluded. I bolded it. Read. Then opened a new tab. Titled it, Recovery. I remembered the only thank you card I ever got from Gloria. Pale pink. Thank you printed in gold foil. Inside? Nothing. Just her name. I used to think that was her way, minimalist, graceful. Now, I wonder if even writing that much cost her something she didn't want to give. She always brushed off the money. It's what family does, she'd say, like a spell. But it wasn't what family did. It was what I did. Realizing that hurt more than the party. More than the omission. It meant I had never been inside the circle. Just orbiting it, handing over warmth like an unpaid son. Then I remembered how Maris once thanked me publicly, glass raised, for covering the honeymoon suite. Everyone clapped. Except I hadn't. I'd paid the florist. Quietly. Gratitude isn't real when it's redirected. It becomes currency in someone else's account. I printed the spreadsheet. Held it like proof in a courtroom. Folded it twice, slipped it into a plain envelope, and wrote in Sharpie, in case I forget. I whispered to the air, you kept them afloat. And they threw you overboard. Juno was on speakerphone later, her voice echoing through my small apartment. I didn't tell her about the ledger. I'm reevaluating the math of my life, I said. She was silent for a beat. Then, about time, Row. I ended the night staring at a picture from 10 years ago. Me and Gloria, arm in arm at the state fair. I looked smaller than I remembered. She looked bigger. Her shadow covered my whole left side. Funny how that photo told the truth long before I was ready to hear it. Have you ever counted the cost of love and realized you overpaid? I folded the paper, slid it into my nightstand, and for the first time, began to wonder, what if they never wanted me at the table? The voicemail came just after 10. Maris always called late, like her requests needed the dark to hide their shape. I let it go to voicemail and listened from across the kitchen island, phone on speaker, voice bouncing off tile. Hey Ro. Just wondering if you could help cover Cleo's flight. We just assumed you'd want to support the family, as always. Let me know. No pressure. She ended with a quick chuckle, as if this were all so normal, routine. I played it 3 times. There it was again. Assumed. Assumption is just expectation without permission. A sentence dressed up to look like a compliment. Cleo. My niece. My soft spot. The only one who ever asked about my art without turning the conversation back to herself. Saying no to her wasn't just hard, it was cruel. So I didn't say anything. I sat down. And let the silence weigh more than the ask. I started pacing, back and forth between stove and fridge, like movement would make the decision clearer. I opened the voice memo app and started talking, like I'd done 100 times before when things didn't add up. If I say no, am I selfish? Or finally fair? The question floated there, unanswered. Then the group text lit up. Family roots, always that name. A lie dressed in Helvetica. Harlan, let me know when you send the funds. Got a book by Friday. Let me know. That phrase again. Not would you mind, or could you possibly, just a pre-filled box waiting for my check. I stared at it. My thumb hovered. My chest tightened. Juno's voice rang in from speakerphone. She always knew when to call. Sometimes a no is the first real boundary we ever build, she said. I typed back. I won't be covering that expense. And hit send. The phone rang instantly. Of course it did. Maris again. Her voice didn't rise, it lowered. Cold, like a draft through a cracked window. So this is who you're choosing to be now? She didn't wait for me to answer. You know what, forget it. I shouldn't be surprised. You always made us feel like we owed you for breathing. Click. The group chat pinged next. Cheryl, way to let us down. Classic. My stomach curled, but I didn't reply. I thought back to the time I drove 5 hours at 2 a.m. to bail Maris out of that conference mess, the one she never mentioned again. I paid the fine, booked the hotel, cleaned her up before HR could find out. My silence was always their currency. And I'd spent a lifetime paying for peace. But peace is too expensive when it comes with erasure. Now I invest in discomfort if it buys my dignity. Then Gloria's voicemail. Soft. Sugar-wrapped guilt. I just thought you'd be different than your father. He always turns his back too. I paused. Replayed it. Listened not to the words, but the absences. No mention of Cleo. No mention of the ticket. Just shame cloaked in parental disappointment. The comparison was strategic. A dart aimed straight at the spot where my need for approval still pulsed. Do your parents ever guilt-trip you for the things they never gave you? Because mine does. Every time. I recorded a private voice note. My own reminder. Love shouldn't feel like debt collection. That night, I deleted the voicemail. Then opened Instagram and unfollowed both Maris and Harlan. Not in anger. In clarity. Scrolling one last time, I saw Maris had posted a brunch photo. Perfect smiles. Caption, family first. Always. I wasn't in the picture. Of course. Sometimes family is just the brand name they slap on entitlement. I turned off my phone. Let the dark settle. I didn't say no to them. I said yes to the version of me I'd buried. But saying yes to yourself comes at a price, and the invoice always arrives sooner than you think. I didn't reply to any of them. Not Maris. Not Cheryl. Not even Gloria. Not out of fear, but finality. I scrolled through the storm of their messages while sipping lukewarm coffee, each word a punch that no longer landed. They accused. They assumed. They decorated their cruelty with phrases like disappointed in you and this isn't like you. But they were wrong. This was exactly like me now. Silence used to be my prison, tight, airless, built brick by brick from things I didn't say. Now, it was my armor. You don't owe a conversation to the hands that kept you voiceless. Somewhere, years ago, I'd written down a quote that stuck like a seed in my ribs: never explain. Your enemies won't believe it, and your friends don't need it. So I didn't. Instead, I opened each message. One by one. Deleted them. Not out of pettiness, but peace. The shoebox was in the back of my hall closet, buried beneath winter scarves and a dusty old camera case. I pulled it out and set it on the floor like I was handling something sacred. Inside, photos, birthday cards, letters from a time when I believed every scrap of ink was proof I mattered. I sifted through them, piece by piece. A birthday card from Gloria signed only with her name, no message inside. A photo of the family at Maris's second wedding, me in the back row, cut off at the shoulder. A note from my father once scrawled in uneven pen: "You're the glue of this family." Funny. I wasn't glue. I was tape, temporary, disposable, pulled off clean once the box was sealed. I started shredding. Slowly. Thoughtfully. Letting the sound of paper tear replace the sound of their words. All except one. Cleo's thank you card. Small, blue-lined, her fourth-grade handwriting spelling "thank you, Aunt Ro" with a little heart beside my name. No one made her write it. That's why I kept it. Have you ever held on to fake love just because it had your last name on it? That's what this shoebox was. A museum of roles I never auditioned for. And I was finally ready to shut it down. The message came at 9:42 a.m. Harlan. Just 2 lines. I see it now. I'm sorry. I blinked. Reread it. Harlan, who never once broke the family script, who always played neutral. Who, at Dad's retirement dinner, looked right at me across the table when Maris told a joke at my expense, and said nothing. Back then, I thought that silence was complicity. Now, I wasn't sure. Maybe it was conflict. Maybe it was fear. I didn't reply. Not yet. But the seed was planted. And it cracked something open. I left the apartment without my phone. Just walked. Down 39th, past the bakery that still burned its croissants, past the park bench where Mrs. Rook sometimes read poetry aloud to herself, past the kids drawing stars and stick figures on the sidewalk. I breathed. And noticed things. Like how quiet doesn't mean lonely. When you stop fighting for a seat at someone else's table, you notice the feast of your own quiet. I bought a silver ring from a local artisan booth near the co-op, simple. Smooth. A little too snug, which made it feel like it belonged. It was the first thing I'd bought just for myself in years. What's the first small act of love you ever gave back to yourself? I didn't need an audience to clap. I didn't need Maris to approve. This wasn't a declaration. It was a decision. Back home, I did one last thing. I turned off the group chat notifications. Permanently. No more pings. No more Sunday check-ins that weren't about checking in. Then I framed Cleo's card. Put it on my bookshelf. Next to a plant I hadn't let die this time. Not all family is lost. Some parts just get found later. I stood in the doorway, taking in the room, not for what it lacked, but for what it finally held. No noise. No guilt. Just space. And there, still unread in my inbox, was the official invitation to the party. Gold-trimmed. Smug. And then I did what none of them expected, I disappeared. The sky was still dark when I woke. Not storm dark, not rain dark, just that silent, suspended blue that holds its breath before the sun makes its decision. I sat at the edge of my bed, suitcase open, half-packed. My hands hovered over the final items. I didn't cry. I used to pack guilt, obligations folded into the sleeves of sweaters I never wore. I used to pack silence. This time, I only packed what I wanted to bring. Nothing unpaid. Nothing unresolved. In the corner of my closet sat the box, receipts, transfers, proof of all the ways I tried to buy my place. I didn't take it. I placed it inside the drawer I labeled archive. I shut it. Not as erasure. As closure. Juno's message blinked on my phone. Paris won't fix things. You will. I typed back, exactly. Have you ever packed your life for someone else, and didn't ask if they were actually going to drive the car? I locked the apartment. I didn't leave a note. I muted the family group chat for 30 days. And I walked out. At the airport, there were families in every direction, strollers zigzagging past rolling bags, kids clinging to tired parents, soft announcements bouncing off tile. But I felt free. I moved light. Carry on only. No one here asked for explanations. No one said, but why now, or isn't that selfish? I boarded. The seat beside me stayed empty, and that somehow felt like a blessing. The flight attendant smiled, and over the soft intercom came the words, "Bienvenue à bord, welcome to Paris, ladies and gentlemen." I leaned back. Closed my eyes. This wasn't escape. This was trajectory redirection. My hand brushed against the bag by my feet. Inside it, no invoices. No lists. Just a blank leather notebook and a small, grainy photo I'd printed the night before. The first page of a new journal titled "Found Myself." What's the destination you never told anyone you were heading to? Sometimes the best journeys don't come with announcements. Paris welcomed me like a slow exhale. The cab wound its way past shuttered boutiques and dim streetlights, the city cloaked in dusk. When I reached the small hotel near Canal Saint-Martin, I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's dream, except I knew it was mine. I opened the window in my room. The air was crisp, and in the distance, the Eiffel Tower stood like a whisper of permission. I wasn't here to be a tourist. I was here to be still. I unpacked carefully. Camera lens, notebook, one black turtleneck, and the ring I'd bought myself in Portland. No family drama. No drama at all. Just me. And a city that didn't care what I'd been to them. Only who I was here. They erased me from their table. I arrived at a table in Paris they don't know exists. No messages from Maris. Nothing from Gloria. Silence here was balm. Not burden. If absence gave you the room to breathe, what would you fill it with? I woke before sunrise again. Walked through Montmartre before the crowds arrived. The streets still smelled like warm baguette and old stories. I passed painters setting up their easels, vendors arranging their wares, the soft thrum of an accordion somewhere unseen. At a small cafe, I ordered an espresso, pulled out my camera, and took a photo of the light hitting the window beside me. It wasn't dramatic. But it was honest. The first photo of my new exhibit. Stands of light and shadow taught me I was always in focus. I just didn't point the lens at me. I opened my email. Typed. Camden, let's schedule a meeting. I'm ready. Then hit send. That was the beginning. The legal groundwork. The quiet counterstrike. Would you hire yourself as your own advocate if you had to? Because I just did. I booked a return flight. But this time, I didn't book it to them. I booked it to me. The lobby was quiet as I stepped outside. My camera swung lightly by my side. I pointed it at the horizon where the sun finally cracked gold over the Seine. And just as I clicked the shutter, my phone buzzed. Subject line, the anniversary. I didn't need to attend. They needed me to fall in line. When I stepped off the plane, the air didn't smell like escape. It smelled like oxygen, mine. My suitcase rattled behind me, its wheels humming across marble tile, and for the first time in years, I wasn't dragging behind obligation. There was no itinerary to report, no sibling to impress, no matriarch to soothe. This time, the ticket had my name, not their need. As I passed the reflective window of the terminal exit, I caught my own silhouette. Not a woman on the run, but a woman reclaiming her direction. The tourists nearby fumbled with phones and French menus. I just inhaled. Present. Juno had texted before I boarded, "You'll say you're on vacation. I'll say you're reclaiming territory." I saved that one. Have you ever heard your heart say home in a place you didn't expect? That was me. That was Paris. By the time I reached Canal Saint-Martin, twilight was stretching its fingers across the water. The hotel was small, warm, and tucked along a lamplit street where laughter felt softer and didn't need translation. I didn't unpack right away. I walked. Camera around my neck, jacket snug, feet firm. Streetlights shimmered in the ripples of the canal. I paused, watching. The last time I stood by water, it was a dock in Seaside, waiting for Maris to text me that I was still welcome to her engagement weekend. The text never came. Tonight, no one needed to say welcome. I was already here. At a cafe terrace, I sipped a bitter espresso and watched a street painter quietly layer the sky with gold and gray. No performance. No audience. Just presence. When they said table, they meant theirs. I'm making mine now. Back in my room, I unpacked the suitcase slowly. I'd packed so little, but what I brought felt deliberate. Camera lens. Notebook. One thick sweater. And the envelope, the ledger I'd folded and tucked without fanfare. I slid it into the hotel drawer. It didn't belong to this part of my life. On the dresser, I placed the silver ring I'd bought from a Portland artisan the week before flying out. It had no story. No symbolism, until now. Gloria used to say, marriage, money, loyalty, they're all investments. She wasn't wrong. But I whispered back, not every investment buys dignity. What's the first gift you bought when you finally realized you were your own investment? Mine was a ring. Not a vow to someone else, but a small, shining reminder I'd come back to me. At 3:07 a.m., I woke up sweating from a dream. The anniversary party. A chandelier overhead. Rows of tables. One seat empty, mine. Everyone smiled like it was always meant to be that way. Paris was still dark. I got up, barefoot, and opened my laptop by the window. The screen glowed. I drafted the email. Camden. Legal review attached. I've made my notes. Let's move forward. Rowena. This wasn't retaliation. This was architecture. I picked up my photojournal and scratched out its title. In its place, I wrote, found myself. They erased my name. I'm writing mine in neon now, so they can't ignore it. My phone buzzed. Subject line, final payment received, anniversary event. I stared at the words. You think you're done running? Sometimes the chase starts after you arrive. I accepted the ticket to Paris, but now I hold the boarding pass to their collapse. The morning began with a ping. A photo filled the screen, candlelit tables in a ballroom dressed in cream and gold, captioned, "See you soon." I blinked once. Sipped my coffee slowly. The view outside my Paris window held no candles, no speeches, no obligation. Just light, moving across rooftops like breath after a long cry. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Below the message sat a link: join the live stream of tonight's celebration. I clicked it. Not to attend. To witness. Sometimes you don't show up because you're already present, just seen differently. Have you ever watched something you helped build and no longer wanted to be part of? I adjusted the volume, muted the camera, and let the live feed roll while I stayed still. The gala was everything I expected. Sparkling chandeliers. Champagne towers. A jazz trio smoothing the edges of the evening. Maris, in sapphire blue, rose with a practiced smile. To family, to love, to tradition. Tradition. The word landed like a crack in porcelain. I scanned the program shared on screen, 50 names, glowing in gold font. Not one said Rowena Vale. And still, I didn't flinch. Until chaos bloomed quietly, like a dropped wine glass in a quiet room. The host's voice paused mid-sentence. Whispers. Gloria rushed toward the edge of the ballroom. Then, breaking news scroll on the live stream overlay. Alton Vale collapses during family celebration. Paramedics en route. My father. Heart complication. A pause, not an end. But the shift was instant. Maris froze at the mic. Harlan disappeared backstage. Gloria, still holding her wine glass, gestured to no one in particular, like commanding the scene back into control. I leaned closer to the screen. This is the seat they've suddenly remembered, I whispered. Just too late for one of us. Hours later, the video appeared on Maris's PR channel. Gloria stood at the same podium. Her voice soft, rehearsed, polished. We lost our daughter for the night. We hope she knows she was missed. I pressed pause. Not invited. Not mentioned by name. Just a daughter now that grief played better than absence. The comments rolled in under the video faster than the stream could keep up. Why wasn't she there? Didn't she pay for the party? Who's Rowena Vale? She funded it and got left out? The livestream's public chat on my own feed lit up. Strangers defended me. Loudly. They apologized for optics, not truth. I watched Maris blink too long, her lips tightening. A guest leaned over and whispered. The audio wasn't clear, but I read the shape of the words. She paid for this table. When an apology sounds like a press release, do you accept it or ask for consequences? I didn't need either. Just clarity. Minutes later, Maris posted on her story. A black and white photo of the venue entrance. Overlay text, I wish Rowena would come back and finish what she started. I stared at it. The framing was flawless. The guilt? Subtle. Sharp. I screenshotted it and sent it to Juno. They're still scripting me. No reply. I blocked the story. I closed the window. I stood on the balcony where the Paris night hummed with a different rhythm, one that didn't echo their silence or praise their noise. Gaslight is the flicker before the flame. I've left the room. My phone buzzed once more. Camden Hale. Subject line, ready to file. While they scrambled to save appearances, I was already saving myself. The first thing I noticed was the light. Soft, gold, deliberate, spilling across the gallery floor like forgiveness I hadn't asked for. People moved in quiet hums of conversation, their wine glasses catching the same glow. On the far wall hung my exhibit, Found Myself. The first image, a chair left empty. The second, a sealed envelope, my handwriting on it, ledger. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about revenge. It was reclamation. I heard Maris's voice in my head, once so casual, "It's for the family." But tonight, that phrase meant something new. It meant the family I was building from the wreckage. Juno appeared beside me, leaning close enough that I could feel her smile. "Look around you," she whispered. "You did this." For a second, I just breathed. Have you ever shown up to your own unveiling and become your own guest of honor? That was me, finally the host of my own life. A woman approached me, phone in hand. Her screen glowed with a familiar image, Maris's Instagram story, the one I'd saved. The caption still read, "I wish Rowena would come back and finish what she started." "I know who you are now," the woman said softly. "They've been talking about you." Before I could answer, I spotted Camden Hale's team near the entrance, discreet, sharp. They were handing out quiet press kits stamped Vale Family Trust, pending legal review. I hadn't asked for exposure. I had just stopped hiding. A memory cut through, me handing Gloria an envelope years ago, marked emergency. She'd taken it with a trembling smile and never mentioned it again. I'd kept the receipts, though. And now, the ledger wasn't just in my drawer, it was part of my story on the wall. A man stepped up to the microphone near the front. "Tonight's exhibit," he announced, "is dedicated to every voice left out." Applause rippled like soft thunder. Through the window, I saw them, Maris and Gloria, standing outside, watching. Their reflections trembled against the glass. "You tried to erase me." I stepped into the frame so I could reflect myself back to you. Someone handed me a microphone. I hadn't planned to speak. My palms felt warm, but my voice didn't shake. "I wasn't invited," I began. The room went still. "I funded the event. And tonight, I fill the space I was denied." Cameras clicked. The silence stretched into reverence. Maris turned away, a hand over her mouth. Gloria's eyes glassed over, not with regret, but recognition. "Would you speak if no one asked you to? Or would you let your silence speak first?" I held Cleo's gaze from across the crowd, her small nod felt like permission. "Family without respect," I said finally, "is debt disguised as duty." Applause again, not for the line, but for the release it carried. Afterward, I walked the exhibit alone. Each image glowed softly, a chapter made visible. One showed my reflection in the Paris cafe window. Another, a close-up of the ledger's seal. The last photo stopped me. Me, under the Paris dusk, smiling. The caption, "I returned to light." That was the real inheritance. I glanced at the crowd, people who didn't know the family politics, who only saw a woman who'd built art out of absence. I mentally redrew my family tree, Juno, Cleo, Mrs. Rooks, and anyone who chose truth over title. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. They edited me out of their photo album, I published mine instead. I walked toward the door. The applause faded behind me as I stepped into the night air. My phone vibrated again. Subject line, "Draft of press release attached." They thought they could keep the chair empty. They didn't know I'd built a stage outside that room. She was the one who paid for the table. The words reached me before I saw who said them. A guest, mid-conversation, turning toward the gallery wall where my exhibit hung. The truth always leaks out first as a whisper. My phone lit up in my palm. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Is this true? Rowena paid? Across the gallery, laughter shifted into murmurs. The air changed. In Kirkland, someone had live-streamed the gala. A still frame from the feed had gone viral, guest list visible, no mention of me. The comments below it poured in fast. Why wasn't she there? Who actually funded this? I thought she was family. I leaned back against the gallery wall, camera hanging from my shoulder like a witness. They thought hiding me meant peace. They didn't realize they'd created an echo loud enough to crack windows. When you drop a truth bomb, does the room defend the crater, or start clearing the rubble? News moved faster than gossip now. A local Portland station picked up the story, anniversary guest list omits daughter who funded celebration. I stared at the headline, unblinking. Then another buzz, an old voicemail, forwarded to me by the catering assistant who tipped me off about the guest list weeks ago. Her voice wavered. They edited you out on purpose. Gloria said it wasn't the right image. The gallery quieted as people turned from the canvases to their phones. Their silence held weight, recognition, not pity. I thought of the sealed ledger envelope, still tucked in my Paris journal. It wasn't regret anymore. It was a receipt of who I'd been, and what I wouldn't be again. Maris tried to patch the cracks with another IG story, family first. Some chapters close. Over a photo of the gala cake. I screenshotted it. You tried to rewrite history. I just pulled the bookmark. A cousin I hadn't seen in 10 years approached during the gallery intermission. His hands were in his pockets, his eyes unreadable. Rowena, I didn't know, he said. I held his gaze. Thank you for finally asking. I didn't owe him more. Online, someone tagged Maris in a viral tweet. You threw a party with her money and left her name off the list. Bold. Notifications flooded in. My name trended, not because I fought back, but because I stood still. I imagined Maris in Kirkland, watching the stage she built splinter beneath her heels. Public image fracturing in real time. If you were invisible at the table, would you show up with a spotlight, or quietly walk away? I chose neither. I stood at the gallery's edge, letting my art speak louder than my attendance. And somehow, I became the center without ever being in the room. Another ping. Camden Hale. Subject line, ready to publish. I exhaled. Then typed one word back, proceed. The ripple had reached the shoreline. All of this, every flicker of doubt, every accusation swallowed, every seat left empty, started with one chair not being mine. And now the tide was turning. Maya Angelou whispered in my memory, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I believed them now. But more importantly, I believed me. Not for applause. Not for validation. But because finally, I didn't need to defend the crater. I had already cleared the rubble. I was building on it. I closed my laptop and stepped outside into the cool Portland air. Streetlight shadows danced on the pavement. I'm free, but not because I left them. I'm free because I let them stay behind. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Message, they're calling a meeting. You're expected to attend. Camden Hale's name lit up my phone. I answered without hesitation. They're ready for your statement. I looked at myself in the monitor, no makeup artist, no rehearsed line, no nerves. Just light and clarity. Across the screen, the family estate came into view. A small stage had been erected on the garden lawn. Cameras lined the hedge. Reporters chatted with mics half lowered. And there, at center stage, Maris stood poised in navy silk. She thought I'd show up physically, desperate for a seat. But I wasn't there for their venue. I was speaking from their control room. Has someone ever called you back to a place you left, and you answered from the outside? The press conference began with a poorly timed smile from Maris. Her voice, thinly veiled in poise, began, "We want to clarify that Rowena Vale was always welcome." She paused as the screen behind her flickered. Screenshots bloomed in full resolution, my sealed ledger envelope, the family group chat with my name conspicuously absent, the deleted message logs I'd archived weeks ago. Reporters stirred. Cameras tilted. The screen didn't blink. I watched from Portland, silent. A question pierced the hum, was this an intentional exclusion, Ms. Vale? Maris tried to pivot. Rowena chose distance. More images, her own story captioned some chapters close, Gloria's passive-aggressive emails, Harlan's financial breakdown marked unshareable. Another reporter asked, were these omissions known to the rest of the family? Gloria fumbled a cough. Maris blinked hard. I didn't interrupt. I let the silence answer. The silence didn't flinch. The truth doesn't need a microphone when the silence speaks for you. The estate live stream cut abruptly. But the damage had already run. In my inbox, board meeting notes auto-forwarded to Camden, Maris's PR firm had canceled their retainer. Harlan's official statement, stepping down effective immediately. Camden sent the file I'd been waiting for, settlement terms drafted. I scanned it once, then signed with my fingerprint. A smile tugged at my mouth, not triumphant. Just done. Social media, once filled with curated posts and choreographed affection, was now overrun by a new tag, Invite Rowena. But I didn't need an invitation. What happens when the house of cards is built on your kindness, and you walk away? They said exclusion was tradition. I turned it into their headlines. Back in Portland, I flew home to calm skies. My calendar was cleared. I wasn't rushing to anyone's call. At the gallery, I stood before the final exhibit. The ring I'd bought in Paris sat open in its box. Next to it, the now famous envelope, silent, damning, complete. This ring was my promise to myself. The envelope was theirs to explain. I snapped a photo and uploaded it. Caption, I didn't lose family. I just stopped renting a seat at their table. Then I set my phone down and stepped back. The reckoning isn't when they apologize, it's when you no longer wait. My phone buzzed again. Subject line, March issue, your story featured. I sat at my desk in Portland, morning light pouring across the hardwood. Calendar open, I stared at the recurring entries labeled family, no response. I clicked each one and pressed delete. Then, I opened a new document. I accept no apology when no repair is offered. I typed it plainly, then closed the file. They hadn't reached out with hands, they'd sent a statement. A press script. No conversation. Just noise without a pulse. I responded in kind, silence. No reply is sometimes the clearest reply. Next file, project myself. When you draw a line, do you expect an answer, or just honor your own map? My eyes fell on the ring from Paris. The framed thank you card from Cleo sat next to it on the shelf. These weren't tokens, they were cornerstones. I wasn't boardless. I had a new board. Laughter echoed in the studio later that morning. Juno balanced a tray of muffins. Cleo edited a reel. Mrs. Tilda Rooks, ever the sage, sorted fabric samples for a community arts night. We weren't just busy, we were becoming. You're not just the witness, I told Cleo, handing her a camera lens. You're the beginning. In the lobby, I mounted a massive photo canvas from the gallery, my favorite, a long wooden table with mismatched chairs, and every seat filled. The title read, Seats for All. They built a table. I drafted a space where everyone has a chair. What kind of table are you really sitting at? One made, or one you cleared? Later that afternoon, I opened a live chat stream titled Building Your Own Table. Viewers joined in from all over, some I knew, most I didn't. I'm not just a daughter who was left out, I said, smiling at the lens. I'm someone who stopped waiting for a seat and started building a room. The comments flowed. Thank you for showing me I didn't have to wait for permission to belong. I showed my teenage daughter your exhibit. She cried. Then she started writing again. They weren't just watching, they were rebuilding their own blueprints. I thought about the memory archives I'd shredded last month. It wasn't erasure, it was realignment. The label of not enough didn't fit. Never did. Legacy isn't bloodline. It's body of work and heart of service. I clicked through to a new slide. One side of the screen showed the sealed ledger envelope, the other displayed the Paris dusk photo. The silence and the voice. The omission and the redefinition. By twilight, I'd closed my laptop and wandered into the gallery. The lobby was quiet, except for the glow of a single piece. The empty chair. It sat under a soft amber spotlight, drawing the eye and the breath. But tonight, I didn't feel absence when I looked at it. I felt ownership. I wasn't chasing a seat anymore. I was inside the frame now. My phone vibrated. A text from the live chat moderators, you've been invited to speak at the National Women's Empowerment Conference. Theme, found myself. I didn't hesitate. I'm in. This table isn't done. It's traveling. They imagined my endpoint. I redefined my path. As I turned off the gallery lights, I glanced at the chair next to the stage. It was still empty. Waiting. For the next story. The lights of the Chicago gallery cut through the fall dusk like a new sunrise. I stepped onto the marbled floor and was met with applause, not just for the art, but for the journey. Supporters had flown in from 10 states. My series, now titled Seats for All, greeted them at the entrance. Center stage, a photograph of an empty chair, its shadow stretching long and unapologetic. They offered me a seat I never used, I told the crowd. So I built a stage I always owned. I caught my reflection in the glass case holding the framed ledger print, now titled Truth Before Table. I didn't need their nameplate anymore. I had earned my own. When your story becomes someone else's mirror, what do you see? I saw not just pain reflected back, but clarity. And presence. My victory wasn't in any apology. It was that I was still here. Backstage, I checked the live stream feed on an iPad. The screen split, on one side, our vibrant gallery, on the other, a cold, dark estate hall back in Kirkland. The chandelier was off. The tables gone. The room empty. A single camera captured it, live. Comments rolled in like waves. She made them notice by not being there. They filled chairs with ego. She filled hearts. I tapped out one tweet, family isn't who fills your table. It's who keeps the chair open. They built a narrative about family loyalty. I built a legacy about self-loyalty. If their table fell silent when you left, what kind of noise would your life make? Later, alone in the green room, I flipped through my tour schedule, London. Sydney. Montreal. Each city had said yes to the traveling exhibit. To seats for all. To my name, carried further than their invitation ever could. I closed my eyes. Paris, Portland, Chicago, they weren't just cities. They were steps in the path I paved for myself. Juno's text buzzed on my screen, "You're becoming the chair for others too." I replied, I never wanted a seat back. I wanted the blueprint. I remembered something Maya Angelou once said, I can be changed by what happens to me. But I refuse to be reduced by it. They tried to reduce me. I expanded instead. My journey wasn't about being welcomed back. It was about welcoming what's next. I ended the night with an open Q&A livestream. Ask me anything, I said, leaning into the frame. A message appeared, how do I start my own table when mine is broken? Kansas. I looked straight into the lens. Start by clearing the chair you've been sitting in, with your name on it. You don't need a guest list. You need a reason. Behind me, the empty chair photo glowed gently on the gallery wall. My story is no longer just mine. It's a blueprint for someone else's seat. You didn't lose your place, I told the audience. They refused it. Find your own place. Outside, headlights swept across the gallery windows. A limousine pulled up, elegant and quiet. Lettering along the side caught in the light. Vale Foundation.